Okay, welcome back everybody for another edition of the Phya Academy video newsletter. We're making our rounds back through our first initial themes, and now we're expanding upon them. Last week we expanded upon heroism. This week we are looking to expand upon accountability. Now, one thing I want everyone to remember is when you're signed up to this email list, you get access to every single past email. So at the bottom of the email, right, that the one you received Monday, 7:30, you'll find a link to a playlist, and that playlist contains every single video lesson, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that I did in Accountability 1, and if you want to refresh your memory, or if you're new to the list and you haven't seen that one, then make sure that you go and you click, and you can access that playlist, and all the lessons are right there for you. Now, in the first accountability, there we go. Hey, nice to see everyone. In our first accountability lesson, we talked about athletic accountability, and it was this idea that accountability is something we take on ourselves in the bad times, and we see it through. I wanted to expand upon that this week by thinking about accountability in leadership, and in particular, what we can think about as we aspire to become leaders of our house, leaders of our community, maybe leaders of larger movements, depending on how grand our visions are. And I thought that we could use some intriguing ideas in sport history and a really strong contemporary example of accountability and leadership in sport as a way for us to find the balance. And we'll see exactly what that means. Because when we're talking about accountability in leadership, something that makes somebody a leader is accepting struggle, accepting sacrifice, but oftentimes going above and beyond their own burdens. And leaders will take on the burden of somebody else willingly. So even when it's not yours to carry, a leader will take that burden, will put it on their back, and carry it. So to become a leader that's worthy, to become a leader that somebody wants to follow, you have to accept the necessary sacrifices, right? You have to accept that things aren't necessarily going to be fair for you. You're going to have to accept that you might have to do more than other people, and maybe you're going to receive less. And so when we are in leadership positions, we're always in the spot where we're giving, and we're taking on, and we're taking on, and we're taking on. But I think that there are some intriguing lessons from sport that can help us as aspiring leaders, as growing leaders, as developing leaders, or somebody who is looking up to a leader and maybe wondering, why aren't I following them the way that I used to, or something is wrong with them. That's because leaders oftentimes take on too much, or the good leaders have a hard time distinguishing when it's too much versus the right amount. And so I want to talk about that idea of balance today. Now, if we go all the way back to the ancient Greeks, as we do, I want to talk a little bit about Heracles. Now, in Accountability 1, I talked to you about the story of Heracles choosing virtue, a life of virtue as opposed to a life of vice. And that choosing the life towards virtue meant accepting the struggle, accepting the sacrifices, accepting the hard things, and not simply choosing a life of comfort. So this is something that allows us to see the leadership qualities of Heracles. But there's even something that's even greater when we think about what made Heracles take on the struggle, right? Heracles, as the myth goes, is the son of Zeus. Zeus is the head god. He's the thunder god of the Olympian gods, the most powerful of all the ancient Greek gods. And he is the son of Zeus and a mortal woman named Alcmene. Pardon me. So at his birth, he's sort of half mortal, but half divine. And there's a prophecy that Alcmene is going to give birth to the new king of the land on a certain day. Now, Hera, that's kind of Zeus's wife, a major goddess in Greek mythology. She steals Heracles' birthright. He's supposed to be born on this day. He's supposed to inherit the kingdom of the Greeks, but he's born with a twin, and she delays Heracles' birth so that he's born on the following day, and the twin actually gets to claim Heracles' birthright. And the only way for Heracles to regain what's actually his is to endure the 12 labors, is to endure the physical feats that we know Heracles for doing. Fighting monsters, defeating giants, these kinds of things. And it's upon the completion of these 12 labors, these 12 physical tasks, in order to regain his birthright, that Heracles finally is allowed to transcend. He takes his place amongst the Olympian gods. And what this means for us is quite intriguing, because even Heracles, right, as a leader, takes on a burden that he shouldn't have to take on, right? He shouldn't have to complete these 12 labors. He was fairly cheated out of his birthright. But we also know from Heracles' story that he accepts this burden that's not his. He accepts the road towards virtue. He completes the 12 labors. And in the end, he becomes the patron saint of ancient Greek athletics, the patron saint of the gymnasia, and the mythological founder of the Olympic Games. Now, when we're thinking about transcendence and leadership, obviously, we're not mythological heroes, but what we think that leadership in an athletic sense can give us, right, is legacy. But sometimes the legacy can be too great because, again, we're not heroes. We're not mythological heroes like Heracles. We're not born of a god. And I couldn't help but notice a striking connection to this notion of accountability and leadership with one of the, I think, most respected players in the NHL, and certainly one of the most revered athletes in terms of their demeanor and character, and that is Montreal Canadiens goaltender Carey Price. Now, what's intriguing about Carey Price is he is known colloquially as the best goaltender in the world, even though for the past few years he hasn't really played up to that standard. He's had injury problems. But last year, in kind of a strange playoff format due to the pandemic, he recaptured his old form and led his team not single-handedly, but pretty close, all the way to the Stanley Cup final. And his team was not even supposed to make the playoffs. They were one of the last-place teams to enter into the playoffs, and they just knocked off like the number one, number two, like they just knocked off all these big teams, and Carey Price was one of the big reasons. And in the finals, they lost, right? They didn't end up winning the championship, and the final press conference after you lose, what does Carey Price say, right, to the cameras? He says, "I didn't play well enough in the first few games, so I cost the team the Stanley Cup. It was my fault." The captain of the team, Shea Weber, big defenseman, he's sitting right next to him on the podium, and he chimes in. He says, "This is absolutely not true. Like, we didn't play well enough in front of Carey. We didn't give him a chance." Two exemplary displays of leadership, and it's a moment that sticks in my mind. And it's a moment that became even more pronounced because Carey Price did not start the season with his team. He went on a player leave to deal with mental health and potential substance abuse. Now, it's private, so we don't know exactly what happened, but he has publicly announced that he has been dealing and suffering with substance abuse for multiple years and has checked himself into a rehab facility, I believe a rehab facility, and he's taken time away from the team. Now, when you play goalie for the Montreal Canadiens, it's not like any other position in sport. It is a hallowed position. It is a legendary position. The greatest goalies to have ever played the game have played goalie for Montreal. Montreal is the most storied NHL team, the most championships, the most Hall of Famers. And they love their goalies maybe more than any other player. And this also means they are hard on their goalies. So Carey Price faces an immense amount of pressure from the market, but he has always been this calm and cool character who has taken it on in stride and has been an absolutely incredible leader on and off the ice. But this has clearly come at a cost to his own person. He's had to deal with the pressure, taking on these additional burdens that maybe he shouldn't have to, and dealing with substance abuse problems. And I think accountability and leadership looks like Carey Price. He says, I can't be the leader I need to be right now. I need to take time away. I don't have the right balance right now. To me, this is the kind of leadership we want to emulate. We know when we've taken on too much and we identify it. And then we take an even stronger leadership position to move away because we're just not right. And what Carey Price tells us is that we have to remember that it's all about balance. And this is what the ancient ideal from the Greeks teaches us about sport, its value, and in particular, the types of leaders that we want to see that come through sport or that can be trained in sport. Because history shows us how athletics and physical exertion kind of force us into being accountable to ourselves and our communities, especially in the ancient Greek sense. When we're talking about the very first written accounts of athletics, we're talking about the Homeric heroes of the Iliad, of the Odyssey, like pictured here, Hector facing off against Achilles. The leaders fight for the group. The heroic individuals will fight for glory on the battlefield, and the winner of this heroic battle, individualized battle, will actually represent battle for the entire squad, the entire army. So the leaders will take on all of this burden, all of this sacrifice, and because they're warriors, right, one will live and one will die. Clearly, it's not necessarily giving too much, but it's giving the right amount in terms of a warrior. Now, as we move through Greek history, we still see this strong link between accountability and leadership with the hoplites, right? These are the citizen warriors, the citizen fighters of the ancient Greek city-states. And it comes as no surprise to us that the position of maximum honor is the position of maximum danger, right? Hoplites cover half of themselves with a shield, and the other half of their shield covers the person that stands next to them, and unless you're standing at the very front left, and then you hold, but your one side is exposed. This is the place of ultimate honor. And to give you a sense of the link between athletics and this notion of honor, like the most warlike people in ancient Greece, the Spartans, if you were a Spartan athlete and you won an Olympic medal, your prize was to fight next to the king in the second most dangerous position. So leadership in the ancient Greek sense is accountability, taking on that burden, and in a sense, risking your life. And for them, athletics, not necessarily in the Homeric times, but clearly in the time of the Hoplites, the time of the Olympic Games, the time of the major Pan-Hellenic athletic festivals, the athletes were the ones to display this type of accountability to the rest of the Greeks, because you don't have Greeks going out and watching battles. What you do is you have Greeks spectating and watching athletes and mythologizing them and heroizing them and turning them into legends. And it's that accountability that we want to see. And so as we think about leadership and accountability, we have to remember the ancient Greek ideal of arete. That is the most excellent virtue, and it's the combination of body and mind together. So when, as leaders, we take on too much, what we're doing is we are messing with the balance. We've taken too much burden onto ourselves that we can no longer carry, and this actually ruins our ability to be effective leaders. And this is why the example of Carey Price is so striking and so strong in my estimation, because he clearly was somebody that took too much on to himself and then took immense courage to say, I've done this to myself and I need to leave so I can fix it. So when we're thinking about accountability and accountability as leaders, as people who take on this additional burden willingly, because that's, again, what will give us the respect and the legitimacy as leaders. Nobody wants to follow somebody who's not sacrificing or showing their willingness to sacrifice. We should audit our thoughts on accountability by thinking about this notion of balance. We want to understand, why are we struggling? What is your end goal? Like, for me right now, I'm having a difficult time with time management because I've got a young family. I work a full-time job at the university. I'm starting my side business. We got a Century home that we also upkeep and improve upon. I like to converse and talk with my wife as well. I have hobbies, right? And things that I like to do personally as well. Like, I exercise a lot, as everybody knows. So where's the balance? Like, where's the balance? Where's the struggle going to? Am I putting extra things onto me for the right reasons, right? Am I taking on the additional responsibilities of Phya Academy because of what? Like, why am I aiming it towards? And am I able to handle it all? Right? These are things I'm constantly thinking about. These are things that are constantly slipping into my mind, out of my mind. And the way that I think we should think about this, and it's, as me as kind of like leader of a household, but again, and for you, you may be thinking about your leadership in a different way, or how you're responding to a leader, right? Again, you may have a coach, you may have somebody you admire and you look up to, and you start to see them fraying. You start to see them burning out, right? Maybe you can take this knowledge and this lesson to them, right? Or again, apply it to yourself. Think about, am I struggling towards something that's positive, right? Heracles struggles towards his birthright. Carey Price struggles towards representing the legacy of the Montreal Canadiens. But at one point, he actually starts struggling too much. So when you're struggling towards something positive, it can give you that kind of an extra boost, an extra strength. But when you're running away from something, and it's clear in the Carey Price example, if he did turn to substance abuse, that he was running from something. He was hiding from something. So when you're struggling and hiding, well, this maybe is a good sign that you need to recalibrate the balance and maybe take a little bit off and relieve a little bit of that pressure. We don't have to take it all on all the time. And I think that if we keep this notion of balance in mind, we'll be better able to be accountable as leaders. And I think that these are intriguing lessons through sport that can help us become the best leaders that we can be. And clearly that allows us to become the best people that we can be. All right. I love these lessons. I cannot wait to deliver the next one to you. Let's get at it. And I'll see you guys next week. Thanks.